I'm going to chat and I'm going to try and break it down for you guys in terms of what we have learned, what I have learned after about 10 years and hundreds of millions of dollars of other retailers' money. So the best practices that I will share with you guys really come about as a result of a lot of money being spent in the retail vertical, specifically with Google Shopping. So everything I speak to today is going to be from the point of view, and this is my big assumption. My big assumption is that you guys are all retailers and you are trying to drive as many sales as you can through this channel while driving those sales at a rate that is profitable for you. So balancing between maximizing volume of sales that you will drive, but doing so at a rate that drives the minimum amount of profit and you can grow from there. That's my assumption. So I'm going to go over, in my mind, there's probably 4 areas that you really need to think of, right? These are the 4 big things that I will cover. First and foremost, the final one to animate is make sure you're tracking your conversion piece. The thing that sets paid search apart from any other channel really lies in its ability to measure. I am a huge fan of 2 quotes in my life. One is a Deming quote, and I might botch this a little bit, but the gist of it was, if you don't have data, you're just another person with an opinion. And so that one really resonates because if you get the conversion tracking piece taken care of, you can measure everything. And then the numbers will show you where the opportunities lie. So I wouldn't spend a penny of my own money before I really focused on getting the conversion tracking piece airtight, because those numbers are going to be your guide moving forward. The other quote that I always like is John Wanamaker said, "I know that half of my advertising dollars work, I just don't know which half." And he said that back in like 1918, very applicable to paid search, because you can, with your measurement piece taken care of, you can measure which half is working. And then you can apply more resources into those areas, right? It's not about just spending loads of money, it's about spending loads of money where you're getting the justified return. That's the all-important step 1. So I always start, no matter what topic I'm speaking on, under the umbrella of paid search, I always start with conversion tracking because it's so key. What you're looking at on the screen right now, this comes from the Google AdWords account, right? So this is a snapshot, not a very good snapshot, but each line item in this instance is a conversion tracking script. Now, if you are a merchant trying to drive sales through a shopping cart, and I think by default a lot of you guys are that person, but you're probably also driving sales through inbound phone calls. I'm going to touch on that too. But for now, just simply the piece where the sale is going through the shopping cart. You want to make sure that you've got your Google AdWords conversion tracking script measuring that piece and that piece alone. One active conversion tracking script, man. Don't muddy the data. You don't need to muddy the waters. You can use Google Analytics to track any secondary conversion. Figure out what is most important to you. And in 10 years of doing this and working with retailers, more often than not, it's driving a sale. That's the most important action you want people to take. Therefore, use AdWords, the conversion tracking script, to track that piece. And then take this one step further, the all-important one step further. Make sure that you are grabbing dynamic revenue associated with each sale. Can I get a quick show of hands? How many of you guys have 1,000 SKUs or more? It's most of you. Is there a price point across those 1,000 SKUs or more where you've got the low-end price point and then you've got on the other end your most expensive point? It happens all the time. So don't treat all sales as being created equal. Okay, so that's my piece, and I can drill down into each one of these a little bit more specifically, but I realize I'm 4 minutes into my presentation and I've really yet to cross the start line. I'm going to wrap it up by saying, please make sure conversion tracking is focused on and make sure that it's awesome because the numbers are so important. Moving on. It's all about shopping today, right? So Google Shopping, why did we pick this topic? We picked this topic because as an agency, right now we have about 270 accounts that we're managing in about 7 different countries. And across all of those different retailers, Google Shopping accounts for about 44% of the spend that we're managing. And there's no secret there. It's because it's lowest hanging fruit after your branded terms. It's where we see, on average, a lower cost per click than the average text ad, and we also see a higher conversion rate than the average text ad. And if you marry low cost per click with high conversion rate, by default, you're going to get low cost per sale in terms of click cost. That simply means more profit. That's why Google Shopping is such a big topic, and you really want to get into best practices before you blow a bunch of money. I tend to go off on tangents, but blowing a bunch of money. If there's any Googler in the house, I apologize. I don't apologize, because Don't Be Evil went out the window when they went public. Google drives, the last time I checked, at least 87% of their revenue through paid search, through the clicks that you guys are paying for. That's what drives the Google monster, most valuable company in the world, right? If I was running Google, and we're all in business, so we're all for-profit entities, and 87% of my revenue came from one source, I don't blame them for implementing things on their end to get more of that source, to get more clicks. But you guys are not in the business of simply driving traffic to your site. You want to drive traffic to your site that converts. That's the difference. So we've moved on. We've assumed that you've got conversion tracking locked down. The next thing is your actual feed. Okay, so I said 4 areas that I'll touch on. This is the second part, is the feed. The feed is critical. So here's an example I want to show you. Cheerios box on the right, Cheerios box on the left. That's the graphic example of what a good feed looks like and a bad feed looks. So you can understand a little bit just in the example the impact of a poorly constructed product feed. That's what happens. So the feed is critical. The feed is what you need in good shape so you can leverage everything that's going to follow. So most important things, I believe, when you're looking at your product feed, Google Shopping is always triggered by a search query. Somebody's typing in a search query. By default, it's a keyword. So what I would do is I would look and do some keyword research specifically for your space. What are your people, what are your prospects using? What are the keywords that are driving traffic? And you can find these keywords. You don't have to brainstorm, although I think off the top of your head you can probably come up with a pretty good list. But you can look at search query reports in your AdWords account. It's going to tell you definitively what people are searching for. You can run site search reports. There is a wealth of data to figure out what keywords are important for you and for your targeted audience. And then what do you do with that? What's the next step? Well, you take that keyword research and you plug it into your titles, and you make sure that you've got things like brand name. And in that title description, it's an attribute in the feed. The next one are the descriptions. So, by the way, I have these slides at our booth. You guys can come by and we'll gladly hand them out after the fact. So, obviously good, bad, right? It's not rocket science. It's just you have to have this data in your descriptions so that when somebody searches a query, Google can crawl your feed and make sure that you're getting maximum volume of relevant impressions. Okay, so the feed is not my favorite part, but it's certainly a critical piece. What I really think you should think about on your side are recommended attributes. Think about your product right now, your business model. There are multiple examples of what you can leverage as far as recommended attributes. More often than not, it's things like size and age and gender and material and color and so on. Just additional attributes that will tell Google about your product offering. And then maybe the most important thing that you can leverage once you've got the fundamentals taken care of in your feed is the custom labels. So custom labels are yet one more column of data in your feed, but it's where, when you are now moving on to step 3, which is actually creating and managing the campaigns in AdWords, you can target these custom labels that you've laid out. So if you tag a keyword with things like seasonality or profit or stock, anything that's important to your business model, your dynamic, these are things that we do all the time. If you guys, any of you were in Chicago last year, I spoke on the topic of seasonality and how it affects retailers with regards to paid search. This came up at that time because seasonality is something most of you will experience to a degree. You can use that as a custom label. Certain keywords in season, massive profit opportunity. The exact same keyword out of season, it's a leader, it's a loss leader, that is. So anyway, lots of things you can do, but just know main takeaway thought right now is that the feed is critical. If you have a substandard feed, there's only so much you can do in step 3. I'm going to segue into the actual campaigns within Google right now. So you started with good conversion tracking, you've got your feed in good shape, and now we're going to move into how you build campaigns. Earlier, I mentioned that Google drives 87% of their revenue through paid search clicks. It's a wonderful channel if you are a retailer trying to drive profit through this channel. It really is a very powerful channel. However, the analogy that for me resonates the most is that Google AdWords and shopping PLAs fall under Google AdWords. It's like it's a fighter jet. So much power at your fingertips. But most people don't know just how specific they can be and how much control they can actually take. And they end up flying this fighter jet like a World War II biplane. Is an analogy I hope that resonates. But this is when I'm talking about control. Control will allow you to bid in the areas where you're getting good, profitable return. Here's the most important guiding thought, I think, if you're a retailer leveraging this channel. And it doesn't just apply to shopping, it also applies to any other campaign, whether it's text ads or display. This applies to everything. Once you've got your conversion tracking rock solid, once you've got data accruing, you should be able to slice and dice your data, just explore the data, explore the numbers, with this thought in mind. How do I identify what's working? Once you've and my definition of what's working, by the way, is something that's converting profitably. Once you've done that, and it's not hard, once you've done that, the next thought would be, can I get more of that traffic? So what I want to show you here is that this is a simple diagram that shows you how structure for a retailer who carries multiple products. This is kind of an idea of what it might look like in the actual campaign. What this does, though, in a word, is allows control. This will give you control to ultimately bid where it makes sense. Now, this is the piece that allows for really good management. So that's a snapshot of your account, of anybody's account. You can access what Google calls competitive metrics. And I'm going to give you an example here. But competitive metrics, one of them, I think the most important one, is search impression share. Search impression share is the number that if it's 40%, what Google's telling you is that your ad is showing 4 out of a possible 10 times. You're only getting 40% of the available impressions that you could be getting. So what you do is you do your analysis and you say, hey, this line, this product, this category, this brand, whatever it is, gangbusters, I'm making loads of money. And then you look at the search impression share to answer the question, is there more traffic to be had? And once you've identified that, then it's simply a structural piece to make a change to maximize how much traffic you're getting on that piece. If you approach it with that thought, the second big benefit is that you'll actually also identify what's not working. And there's an element of bleed. If you're spending, conservatively, I think it's 20%. 20% of the spend is probably not doing much for you. And you want to identify that because part of driving growth in profit is also eliminating what's not working and taking that $2,000, that 20% or whatever it is, and throwing it into the areas where you can be getting more as long as it's profitable traffic. So the whole premise of what I'm trying to communicate today is that if you analyze the data, this is an example, it's a snapshot of an actual account. In the example I want to show you, this merchant had 318 conversions, sales. And the next thing I want to show you is they were paying $33 for that particular line item, that brand. That was the cost per converted click. In click cost, that's what they were paying. That's highly profitable for this particular merchant. And so the next thing you want to look at is search impression share, and you can see it's less than 60%. So the opportunity is that there's 40% more traffic to be had. This is the thought process, the step-by-step for how you look at the data. And then you look at the final one, which is benchmark max CPC. It's another competitive metric that Google gives you. It's an average of what your competition are paying for that click. And you can see that the average was 60 cents. This merchant was paying 36 cents. So in this case, that's why the impression share was lower. We raised the bid on this brand because it's profitable traffic. If $33 was not profitable, I would never advocate spend more money. That's not good for anybody but Google. But in this instance, that's an opportunity to spend more. You can see how it might be an opportunity to decrease or maybe not carry that brand in that feed that you're uploading because it's not profitable. The last piece, the last idea that I want to share with you is that remarketing as a tactic, whether you're doing it through the umbrella of Google or you are using a third party like AdRoll or Criteo or any one of those others, I see it being like the icing on the cake. Anywhere from 5% to 25% additional profitable conversion volume is what we see with our retailers when we're leveraging good strategies and tactics within remarketing as an idea. So how this ties into the Google Shopping piece is that you can expressly set up your audience lists for the traffic that shopping is driving. Now, the secret that we have discovered, maybe it's not so secret anymore, but there is a window of time after somebody abandons a shopping cart, as an example, where the conversion rate, should they come back, is going to be at its peak. And as time goes by, that person cools off. They may have bought the product from somebody else, but the conversion rate typically drops down over time. So what we do, or what anybody I think should do, is you should create your audience lists with two things. Number one, the action that they took or didn't take. In the example I'm using is abandoning the shopping cart. That's lowest hanging fruit, I think, for remarketing. But then you also want to splice that with time elapsed. So the example might be abandoned shopping cart and within 48 hours. And then you can be at your most aggressive because that's when your conversion rate is typically going to be at its best. If nothing happens, that person moves on to the next list, which is still abandoned shopping cart, but now it's day 3 through day 5. And you reduce your bid and maybe you change your messaging. And then if nothing happens, you move them onto the next list, and maybe at that point you offer incentive in the form of a discount or a coupon, something to get them back to your site. But remarketing, when executed in tandem with your Google Shopping traffic, can be very powerful to get that icing on your cake. Guys, any other questions that you may have? Like I said, we are in the exhibit hall, booth 313. Please come by and have a conversation with us, and we'll be happy to have a chat. I appreciate your attention. Thank you very much.